Hey, storytellers! If you're still juggling Word docs, sticky notes, and 47 browser tabs to keep your story straight, it's time to simplify your writing life. Meet Scrivener, the writing software built by writers for writers. Whether you're drafting a novel, a picture book, or even a dissertation, Scrivener helps you organize your scenes, research, and revisions all in one beautifully structured workspace.
Many of our guests on the Storyteller Shelf podcast have raved about Scrivener and how it completely changed their writing flow. You can move chapters around with a click, store your notes right next to your draft, and even set word count goals that actually keep you motivated.
Curious? Check out our affiliate link. It helps support the show at no extra cost to you. And let us know if you give it a try. We'd love to hear how it helps your writing process.
Welcome, everyone, back to the Storyteller Shelf podcast. I'm Jackie, and Teresa's with me, and we are today back into our middle grade Marvels mini-series. We're so excited to bring another special guest on. Will you introduce yourself a little bit for our listeners?
Sure. So my name is Dana Goldstein. I live and write from Canada, Calgary, Alberta. So Alberta is the province that is right above Montana. For those of you who are not familiar with where I'm in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I basically leave my house and see the Rocky Mountains every single day, which is like the best thing ever. I have two middle grade novels at this time. It's part of a duology. The first book is called Shift, and the second book is called Flow, and they are STEM-based novels for readers 8 to 12.
Well, I'm very excited to have you on. This is going to be fun. If you were a superhero, what would your superhero name be and why?
My superhero name would probably be the Language Lady, which is not really exciting, but it's because I can take these complicated scientific terms and papers and make them easy for people to understand. I've always been able to do that. I wasn't very good in science, I will be candid, but I could understand. As I got older, I can understand the concepts. So yes, Language Lady is here to help you understand all those difficult things you don't know what they mean.
I think I need that superhero every day. Doesn't matter how old I get, I kind of need a pocket one by my size just to help me out and get through the day. You to write for middle graders. And how is it that you tap into the perspective of this age group when you're actually making your stories?
I was inspired by my sons who were avid readers when they were young. And they blew through all the starter chapter books and Big Nate and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And there wasn't really anything for them in their age group beyond, like, say, Harry Potter or Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson, that kind of thing. And they were like high level readers. So I always promised them that I would write stories for them. So a little bit more advanced for readers who specifically boys, because the other part of this equation is I used to be a book buyer for a major chain out here. And at the time, and still to some extent today, there were so many different series for girls. Like there was tons of it. There was Ramona, there's Babysitter's Club, like I could go on and on and on. But for boys, there was the Redwall series, which is great if you're into science fiction fantasy, and Harry Potter, and like heavy chapter books, there wasn't a lot for boys. So I always said, okay, one day I'm going to write them. And I did. I was only about 12 years too late, because by the time I finished writing the books, my boys were already on their way out of high school. They were seniors in high school, I think, when I started to publish. So they were like, yeah, thanks, Mom. Thanks.
I kind of understand where you're coming from because I feel like that you need more heroes that are boys and represent for boys. And I believe, isn't it right that now they're starting to get into that where they're wanting more protagonists that are boy characters and for the book. So actually, this is the perfect time. And I love that you have new books that are out. So this is fantastic. And this will actually be representative of that. So, with that being said, is there a particular moment that you absolutely love from your new book? And why does it stand out to you?
This is a tough one because I'm super attached to like everything that happens in those books, but I would say and there's things that happen in each one that I'm more attached to something in Shift and I'm more attached to something in Flow. But because Flow is more recent in my mind, I would say that I introduced some new characters in book 2 Flow that weren't in Shift. And one of them is a girl named Quinn, and she's really like an echo warrior. And I love how she gently encourages my main character, Dax, to be less of an observer and more of an activist without making him feel like an activist. What I mean? Yeah, she's super chill about, this is our planet. It's the only planet we have, and we have to take care of it. But she doesn't hammer him over the head with it. She sort of shows him how he can use the tools he already has at hand to look out for the planet. So there's a point in the book where that shifts for Dax from being mere observer to being having his hands in how things change for the planet, which for a 12-year-old is super exciting.
I think it's super exciting for any age, but we'll go with 12. For our listeners, I'll just say before we hopped on to record, we were talking about snow happening in unlikely places. So Quinn is just the natural cascade of that. So now I feel like I have to meet her quickly. But Dana, I kind of want to take us back to your perspective, not only as an author and a mom, but again, as someone who knows a little bit about the industry. And I'd love to ask, what is one trend, one challenge, or one opportunity that you see in this world of middle grade literature today?
I think there's a lot of opportunity to explore all the different formats that are out there. I mean, middle grade novel in verse is exploding for good reason, right? I mean, I know that one of the great things about my books is they're under 300 pages. And there's been a big call for those kinds of shorter books for middle grade readers, and we're getting there. And even though the novel in verse uh, is like they're typically well over 300 pages because some pages have like 5 words on them, right? But they're so great. Like I'm a huge fan and I devour these kinds of books because it just sort of it pulls you like really deep into the emotion of the character without all the other stuff in it. Like you don't have pages and pages to establish a story. You got to get right in there in like 6 or 8 or 10 lines, whatever. So I feel that it's sort of getting bigger and building a lot faster than say like a typical middle grade book, like a chapter book like I've written. There's also like really interesting things coming out in the nonfiction world for middle grade that are, I mean, my boys, like they loved the Guinness Book of World Records. And I think like we have everyone from probably 2007 to 2014 because they loved it. Like they love facts, they love learning. It's fun, it's colorful, it's presented in a way that makes it interesting and they don't feel like they're actually learning. And I think that the new nonfiction that's coming out for middle grade is more about the storytelling than the fact telling. And it's really interesting.
I was thinking about how, you're talking about with the nonfiction and that now middle grade is sort of exploding. We were talking about literacy for middle grade because there was some sort of decline in between that time period for a little bit. Would you say that that actually helps with when you're mentioning that it's under 300 pages? So it's like a quicker read. And do you see more of a trend for those kind of books, or where's the trend going?
I think the trend in nonfiction is going more to nonfiction narrative. So more storytelling about, rather than facts, more storytelling about the people behind certain discoveries or advances or events in history to make it more of like, so it reads more like a novel and less like a history textbook.
I like to call that sneaky learning. It's secret learning, like sneaky vegetable. That way they're getting something out of it, but they have no idea. They have no idea. The same thing's happening for a lot of video games now, which is wonderful because kids are stuck in front of the screen. So you might as well make it fantastic and educational for them.
Yeah, and to be truthful, we're competing with those screens as middle grade writers. It gets worse as the children get older, but we're certainly competing with the screens to grab their attention.
Let me ask you, just running off of that, people are writing now with the idea that they want to inspire children, that they want to get their story out there. But again, it's a tough competitive market, not just with other authors, but again, with all the entertainment that just happens to be available for children now. So if you had the opportunity to speak to someone like you who is an author or who wants to be an author, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would say that if you are writing for middle grade, it's okay to let little bits of your adult voice come in because it will give some authority to what you are writing about. One of the things my kids always used to tell me when I was writing this book, I would be writing conversations of like, "Dude, where are you going?" And both my kids were like, "We don't actually talk to each other like that." So, that's like the not good adult voice coming in. Would say find yourself readers in that age group as beta readers because kids have no filter and they're going to tell you like it was well, the kids will tell you it's boring, but if you're filtering through the parents, I had beta readers who just dropped off for whatever reason. And I was like, okay, I need to know, was the book not interesting for your child? Or sometimes life gets in the way. Kids are very heavily scheduled with all kinds of activities and sports. If you're writing middle grade, find the readers who can be your beta readers in that age group, right? The young ones, and, like, they think it's the coolest thing. These kids think it's the coolest thing that, A, not only are you, like, an author of an actual book, but B, they feel like they now have a pipeline directly to you because you're engaging in conversation via email or however it is, and you value their opinion, which matters in the sales, right?
How do you try to find those beta readers? That's like something that I think all authors are trying to gather those readers because you want to have that before you even try to submit to anyone.
It's way easier than you think it is because we all have these built-in communities. We just need to ask. You need to ask and you need to make clear what your expectations are and what you need comments on. I don't need my beta readers to pick up on the missing words and the spelling mistakes and misplaced commas or anything like that. The grammar, the typos, I don't need the feedback on that. So every time I put a book out to beta readers, I go to my community. I post on social media. I talk to my friends in the real world. Like, they have nieces and nephews and cousins and whatever that are more than happy to step up and help out with this. And I give everybody a list of questions. Like, these are the things I need you to consider. But I also make it clear that I don't want you to look at these questions until you're done the book, because then it sort of changes the way that you read and experience the novel. So you just go to your community and have explicit instructions of what you're looking for help on. And it could be things like, where did you get bored? What did you find funny? What do you not understand? That kind of stuff.
If you could travel back in time as an author, what advice would you give your younger self when it comes to writing?
I would tell my younger self to not worry about the can-nots and focus on the can-dos because I wanted to be a writer since the ninth grade, and I opted not to follow that path in university until much later. So I kind of lost a whole lot of years. However, that's not to say I didn't have great living and experiences that certainly impacted how I write now. But I would definitely say to that high schooler, focus on the can-dos, not the can-nots.
That's very evergreen advice because I know, even for myself and other people I've met, a lot of us who are writing now, we have wanted to write at some point in our lives, but we've gotten derailed. Just like you said, whether it's by design, by culture, by whatever, we end up taking another path and we slide back into writing, I think, when we're ready. And you start panicking and thinking, well, I didn't learn anything about writing because I did other things. I haven't practiced, but I still want to be an author. What do I do? What do I do? And then it's a breakdown moment and you prevent yourself from creating and moving forward because of that mental block. So I love the focus on what you can do and just do it. Don't worry about the cannots. Throw them out the window. We don't need those. Dana, you have a lot of books. You're one of our authors that has published quite a bit. And this might be a hard question, but if there was one thing that you wanted your readers to take away from your books, what would it be?
Ooh, that is a hard question because I don't think I can apply one takeaway to all my books because there's 3 different genres in there. You know what? I changed that. I can say I would like people to take away this sense of self-discovery. So whether you're reading my memoirs and finding bits of yourself in there, or you're reading the middle grade novels and you're learning science that you never thought you would be able to understand, or you're reading my adult fiction and discovering or questioning who your friends are, um, that would that would be a great takeaway. Just like that whole journey of self-discovery.
Right before our eyes, Dana threw out the cannot. I cannot answer that question. She said, wait a minute. I've got it. We appreciate that. Dana, could you tell us a little bit more about the different pathways to publishing that you've taken? Have you done traditional publishing or self-publishing, and why did you choose to go that way?
Yes to both. So I started as a self-published author, um, and then I became agented, so I had an agent, and then my middle grade was traditionally published, and after that experience was over and done with, I parted ways with my agent and have fully leaned into self-publishing once again. And it has nothing really to do with the agent and more to do with me in that I am impatient to get my books out there. That doesn't mean I rush them. They are fully edited. Like there's 3 editors on every single one of my books. So I don't rush them. But traditional publishing, like my shift from the day I started writing to the day it was in publication was 5.5 years. I don't want to wait. I did have a young adult book that was on submission for 11 months in the traditionally published world and couldn't find a home. And that was like the last straw for me in that I had a conversation with my husband. I'm super fortunate to have a partner who is like, We'll find the money." He always wanted me to self-publish right from the very beginning. He didn't want me to have an agent. So he's like, "We'll find the money. Just go and just like enough of this waiting around for traditional publishing to decide whether your book." And it's not even a question of whether your book is good or not. It's a question of whether it fits their agenda, right? So it's super frustrating for authors to be in that traditional publishing world, but it's also super frightening and sometimes unaffordable to do self-publishing. But I will say this, there are authors out there who don't have resources to self-publish and they do it anyways. They find a way. Can do, not cannot.
I love that. I think that should be like on a shirt or something because seriously, as an author, like you're constantly trying to find ways, and especially as a self-published authors, I think there's some parallels. Like, were you and I friends at one point? You know what I mean? Because I will say that I also had that journey of like, oh, I'm going to go the traditional route. But they were, as you said, it's like we have our timing, and also we want to have that sort of like control, that creative control as authors. And then it's wonderful that you have that support. I think also because we had this conversation in our last episode that finding that support, because it can be, as an author, it can be lonely when you're trying to do the writing process and the creative process. So finding that your people are so important. Obviously, like it sounds like you have a wonderful group of support, like from your husband to your children to probably, I'm guessing, friends that are so supportive.
So I belong to this is sage advice for any writers: find yourself a writing group. And not necessarily like a writing group where you get together and you write and don't talk to each other. That's like that. I'm far too social for that. I tell my kids, "Oh, like I'll go to the library with you and we can like book a study room and I'll write and you guys can do your homework." And they're both like, "Mom, no, because you just talk the whole time." And they're not wrong. So like I belong to a writers group and we meet once a month and for 2 hours, and we have like a social piece and an educational piece. We just like visit and learn and share. And it's just been so wonderful to have that writer support. Everyone in the group is in different levels of writing. Some have the oldest members of our group, he's been writing books for 50 years. He hasn't published a single one. He hasn't published a single one because he's afraid. So we're sort of like he's now maybe thinking, okay, maybe I got to get over it because we're supporting him in that group to be like, all right, like even if you don't put it out there for the world, we want to see it because we want to support you. So that's the writing group that works for me, is where I can like we can have coffee and we can complain about traditional publishing timelines and we can share our victories without jealousy, which is important, and we can share our losses without feeling inadequate because we all have these ups and downs as writers. So you need those people.
When you are writing, you don't want to be competing with other writers. You need that group. So, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, like, if you want to share who this group is and how do you find those groups?
Yeah. So the group is called the Foothills Writers Group, and I found them because I was doing Google searches for writing groups, and they were one of the first ones to come up. And I had that initial like, oh, do I really want to? Like, I'd already been published, and I didn't know anything about this group. There wasn't a lot of information. Is it going to be just a bunch of people sitting in a room trying to write silently? Like, I didn't know really a whole lot about it. And I thought, well, Dana, the only way you're going to know is to get out of your chair and go. So I did. And the first meeting, I was like, I don't know if this is the right group for me. But instincts were like, just try another one. Just go for another one. So I went to another meeting with the same group, but another month. And it was great. Like it was a lot of fun. And these are great people. And they are now my most trusted circle of writer friends. So it's scary. And it's scary as an adult to like, in kindergarten, you'll go on the playground. Do you want to play with me? But like in an adult group, you're just like, I'm just going to look at my phone and hope nobody looks at me. You got to fix that.
Going off of feeling scared, I know even for myself, but I've met a lot of people recently that they do feel like they're alone in writing, and that they're alone in querying and approaching professionals. But where they really want support is beyond critique. It's really just positive support that they're looking for. But the feedback I get is that people really struggle to open up about what they're writing about because your writing it's more than just your writing. It's usually something that you've worked on so long and hard, kind of comes from the heart, and it's the same stance that happens when you're working with an editor, when you speak to other people, is that you're very vulnerable, and it can be quite, a time full of sensitivities. Do you have any advice for maybe someone who is trying to take that step to share their writing to get that positive support?
Okay, so there's a few things. Go to an open mic night, whether it's comedy or in my city, a bookstore hosts an open mic night for authors. And it's long established, so it's a very safe environment. But still, it's terrifying to get up in front of a room of people you don't know, even people you do know, and read your work. Right? So, yeah, you have to be vulnerable. You have to step up. I've witnessed in an open mic night an author who her voice was trembling. She stopped in the middle of her reading and said, "I think I'm going to throw up," and ran to the bathroom. Right? Like it happens. And it's not easy. Like it's never, for some people, getting up in front of a crowd and reading whatever is super easy. I'm one of those people. But there are people who really struggle with this, and I was like that in high school. I somehow flipped when I got older, and now it's like I know that my words may not resonate with everybody. The one thing I do ask is if I know I'm going to read a passage that has some profanity, this is a cool trick. So I ask everybody to close their eyes, and I ask them, if you are bothered by profanity, please raise your hand. So then, like, nobody knows who in the room has a problem with the F word or whatever, so or any kind of swears. So then I can sort of change some of the language if I'm reading something that's a bit dicier. As far as sharing your work, like, talking about your work, because I think you kinda mentioned that there are people like authors, we keep our stories close to our chest and we don't wanna share them. Just there are no new stories, just different ways of telling them. This is what I say. And I had a conversation in the summer with an award-winning author who's become a friend of mine because we had this conversation and we were sitting at a table together and she says to me, "So what are you writing?" And this is like a very popular Canadian author who's got a lot of awards under her belt, and she's like, she wants to know what I'm writing? Okay. So I told her what I was working on, and she said, "Huh, I was gonna start something like that for my next project." And I said, "Too bad you can't now." So right, and she sorta looked at me and she's like, "Really?" I said, "Okay, let me roll back." I said, "I don't mean you can't. I'm asking you not to because you're a much better writer than me and you'll do a much better job. So please just let me have this one." And that's like the moment I think that's when we became friendly. When we became friends.
I love
So,
it.
yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Friends in unlikely places. Yeah, so you don't know. You might open up and you might get the feedback that you're looking for, or you just might get a friend. Get from this. Don't be afraid to share. There are no can-nots, there's only can-dos. And I feel like don't keep all of your beautiful work a secret or close to your heart. And thank you so much, Dana, for coming on and speaking to us today, giving us so much insight, and for sharing your beautiful work for our middle grade Marvel series. And to all of our listeners, thank you again. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletters and stay tuned for our next episode.
Thank you. This was awesome.
If you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share this with a friend because we know that other people out there could use this too. And one last thing, if you like freebies, definitely join us in our email newsletter. Pop your email in, it's for free. We don't spam you, but we occasionally send things like career opportunities, awards and contests, and handy dandy things like pitch guides and query guides that you might find very useful. So otherwise, we will let you go today, and we'll see you again next time. This episode of the Storyteller Shelf podcast is brought to you by Harney & Sons Fine Teas, a perfect companion to every story. Whether you're reading, writing, or just enjoying a quiet moment to yourself, Harney & Sons offers a beautiful selection of teas to elevate this experience. From classic blends to unique finds, every cup is crafted with care, just like the stories we love to share. Shop harney.com/discount/storyteller, and storyteller is in all caps. Now let's get back to the show.